ever get that feeling like you're being pulled in a million different directions at once?
Yeah.
Work never really ends. Your personal life is kind of on hold.
Oh, yeah.
You're not the only one. It's actually crazy. Over 60% of people who work in the U.S. feel like their work-life balance is just dot off.
It is. It is. The big challenge, right?
Okay.
How do we manage all the stuff at work
Mhm.
without giving up everything else that matters?
For sure. For this deep dive, the sources you shared, they're really interesting. We've got articles with actual, like, hands-on tips to find that balance, why it matters. And then we also went into some of the deeper research, the theories about this whole work-life puzzle.
It's a good mix, gives
Yeah.
us the how-to and the why. So you can try things out, but also understand what's going on beneath the surface.
Exactly. So today, our mission, should we choose to accept it, is to go through all of this and find those golden nuggets, those really important pieces of information. We want to give everyone listening a clear picture of what work-life balance actually means, why it's so important, not just for you, but for your team, your organization, and how to spot those signs that things are getting out of control. And the best part, what can you actually do to make things better?
For sure, yeah.
So let's jump right in. When we talk about work-life balance, what are we really talking about? What does it look like, day to day?
So at the core, it's about finding a good balance, harmony even, between your work life and your personal life.
Right.
But, and this is important, it's not about some perfect 50-50 split.
Right.
Life just isn't that neat. It's more about making choices about your time and energy so you can handle both work and personal stuff, but also, and this is key, making sure you take care of yourself too.
I like that. It's not about the hours exactly, but more about how things feel, being present wherever you are. The articles we read, they highlighted a few things that show you have a healthy balance. Things like setting boundaries, knowing when to step away from work, and actually spend time on other things.
Yeah, that's so important. Knowing when work ends and personal time begins, it's essential. And it also takes being good with your time, organizing things so you're not drowning in to-dos, and making time for both work and things that make you feel good, whether it's family, hobbies, or personal goals.
It's not just about managing your calendar, right? We kept seeing stuff about stress management,
Exactly.
finding ways to deal with all the pressure from both work and life.
You got it. You need to find what works for you, like maybe mindfulness to stay in the moment, or exercising to let go of tension, taking those quick breaks during work to reset, and turning off, unplugging from everything work-related when you're off the clock. Those are all really important parts of keeping a good balance, one that you can keep up. And then there's flexibility. Stuff happens, unexpected things pop up. So if you can adjust your schedule when needed without feeling like everything's going to fall apart, that's a big part of work-life balance over the long term.
Okay, so we're starting to get a better picture of what this is, but why is it so important? Sometimes it feels like just another, buzzword.
Well, the source is really focused on this basic human need, variety and rest. It's like, think about your diet. You can't eat the same thing all the time and expect to be healthy, right?
Right.
So in life, we need different activities, different things to do to stay healthy, both mentally and physically, and to keep our energy up over time. We often think we can just push through, be productive all the time, like an 8-hour workday means 8 hours of amazing work.
Right.
But that's not really how human energy works. We need those times of rest, those times for ourselves, to actually be productive when we are working.
And the articles were pretty clear about what happens if you ignore this.
Yeah,
If you're always working, there are real downsides, not just for us, but also for our workplaces.
totally. For people always pushing no rest, no personal time, it makes you much more likely to burn out. That's that feeling of complete exhaustion. Physical, mental, emotional, everything. It can also lead to feeling tired all the time and all sorts of health problems caused by stress. And the funny thing is, a bad work-life balance often makes people work more hours but get less done because they're just running on empty.
It seems like what people want from work is changing, too. One article talked about a study by Aviva showing that since the pandemic, more people care about work-life balance than salary when they're looking for a job.
But that Aviva study is really interesting because it shows how things have flipped.
Yeah.
For a long time, salary was the most important thing, right? If you wanted a good job, you focused on the money.
Right.
But now, being able to have a good life outside of work, that's become more important for many people. That's a huge shift that companies need to pay attention to. It's not just about the paycheck anymore.
That's a big change. So it's not just about us feeling good, though, right? The sources talked about how good work-life balance is actually good for business, too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are real benefits for employers and they can actually save money. One thing is, when employees have a better balance, they tend to be healthier, so fewer sick days.
Hmm.
This study from UCL, it found that people in office jobs who regularly worked 3 or more hours of overtime had a 60% higher chance of having heart problems. So if companies encourage a good work-life balance, they can lower their healthcare costs and have fewer people missing work because they're sick.
And what about employee engagement? It just makes sense that happier, more balanced people would be more invested in their work, right?
Exactly. A survey by Tower Perrin showed a huge difference, almost 52%, in how much companies earned based on how engaged their employees were. The companies where people were really engaged saw a big jump in their income, while those with low engagement, their income actually went down.
Wow.
So when people feel like their company actually cares about them, not just their work, they're more likely to be motivated, to stick around, and to be good ambassadors for the company.
And if fewer people are burning out, that means they stay with the company longer, which saves a lot of money because replacing employees is expensive.
Oh yeah, big time. The Oxford Economic, they figured out that replacing just one employee can cost around 30,000 pounds, and it can take like 28 weeks to get someone new up to speed and working well. So creating a company culture that supports work-life balance, it's
Right.
not just a nice thing to do.
Right.
It's a smart move that saves time and money and helps keep those experienced people in the company. And then there's mindfulness. When people aren't stressed and overwhelmed all the time, they can focus better and really be present in their work.
Okay, so we've got what it is and why it matters. But how do we know when our balance or someone on our team's balance is getting bad? What are the signs?
Well, the sources listed a few things that show a bad work-life balance. One of the biggest is just working too much all the time, long hours, weekends, holidays, no time for rest or personal stuff. This often leads to neglecting your personal life, where you constantly sacrifice important relationships, hobbies, and fun things for work. And in the end, you can end up burned out physically, mentally, and emotionally exhausted. You also start neglecting yourself, like not exercising, not sleeping enough, not taking any breaks, which makes both your physical and mental health worse. And it's not surprising that your relationships with family and friends also suffer.
The first article we looked at had this very specific list, 8 signs that things might be going wrong.
Oh, okay.
Like you can't stop thinking about work even when you're not there and your relationships are starting to feel the pressure.
Those are huge red flags for sure. If you're always thinking about work stuff when you should be relaxing or with loved ones, that's a problem. And if you notice you're getting snappy with coworkers or distant with family and friends, that's a sign that work stress is creeping into your personal life.
There are also physical and emotional signs like just feeling off for no clear reason. Maybe random aches and pains, always tired, can't focus.
Mm-hmm.
And losing interest in things you used to enjoy outside of work, starting to isolate yourself.
It's amazing how connected our physical and mental health is to our work-life balance.
Yeah.
Those weird aches and pains and that constant brain fog, they can be from too much stress. And when we stop enjoying the things we used to love and start pulling away from people, it creates this vicious cycle, making it even harder to disconnect from work and recharge.
That article also pointed out a few other things, like if you find yourself spending a lot of money to pay someone to do basic things for you because you just don't have the time or energy, or you struggle to take time off even when you're sick and you feel like you can't imagine staying in your current job much longer.
Those are really big warning signs, that you're pushing yourself way too hard. Relying on others to do your everyday stuff just because you're always working means work is taking over your life.
Oh.
And not being able to take time off when you're actually ill, that shows a deeper problem, maybe even a fear that things will fall apart without you. And that feeling of being trapped in your job,
Yeah.
that can mean the lack of balance is just too much and it's really hurting you mentally.
And lastly, that feeling of always needing to be doing something else, no matter what you're actually doing. You're never really present.
That's such a good point. Always feeling restless and directionless, even when you're doing something, can lead to feeling unhappy and eventually make you feel anxious or even question what you're doing with your life. And there's actual data to back all of this up. One study found that working more than 55 hours a week is linked to a much higher risk of stroke, anxiety, and depression. Another one found that even if you think you're getting enough sleep, working long hours still made people's physical health worse. And an Indeed study showed that over half of people who work in offices say they struggle to stop thinking about work even when they're supposed to be off, which shows how hard it is for us to disconnect in our always-on work culture.
All this talk makes me think of that term, greedy institutions. It came up in the academic overview. Can you explain what that means?
So, greedy institutions. It helps us understand those deeper pressures that make work-life balance hard, pressures that aren't always obvious. It's an idea from sociologist Louis Kozer.
Okay.
He said that some institutions, they demand so much of your time and loyalty that they discourage you from being involved in anything else, even your personal life.
Hmm.
Classic examples are things like religious orders, the military, or really demanding academic jobs. They're considered greedy because they take up so much of your time, energy, and mental focus.
Right.
But even a family can sometimes be a greedy institution because of how much caregiving requires. The real problem, the imbalance, often comes when someone is involved in two or more of these at the same time. Like trying to have a high-pressure career and also raise a family. It leads to those conflicts between what you need to do at work and what you need to do at home.
So it's not just about how many hours we work, but also about those unspoken expectations that we should be totally dedicated to one thing, often at the cost of others.
Exactly. That's it. This idea helps us understand why even when someone's work hours aren't that long, they can still feel really conflicted and unbalanced, especially if their workplace culture expects them to be available all the time, respond immediately, and put work above everything else.
This is so insightful.
Yeah.
Switching gears a bit, the academic source you shared went into the theories about work-life balance. It seems like this has been studied for a while.
Oh, yeah. People have been studying the relationship between work and family for quite some time, and the theories have evolved over time. Early on, there was structural functionalism, which became popular around the Industrial Revolution and after World War II. It basically saw work and home as two separate worlds with traditional gender roles. Men went to work and earned money. Women stayed home and took care of the family.
So, a pretty clear division.
Yeah, they thought those two worlds worked best when they were kept apart. Men focused on instrumental tasks at work and women on expressive work at home. Then came segmentation theory, which took this idea of separation even further, saying that work life and family life don't really affect each other. They each happen in their own little bubble.
That seems a bit too simple, given what we know now about how people actually are.
It does, looking back. As we learn more about human behavior and social dynamics, the theories changed too. Compensation theory said that people might seek fulfillment in one area of their life, like their family, to make up for feeling unfulfilled in another area, like their work. Then came role enhancement theory, which had a more positive outlook.
Okay.
It suggested that having multiple roles, like being both a worker and a family member, can actually be good for you because you gain different resources, skills, and experiences from each role.
That makes more sense, that different parts of our lives can actually help and support each other.
Exactly. And that leads us to the concept of spillover, which recognizes that what we experience and feel in one area of our life can spill over into another. And this spillover can be good or bad. For instance, a really stressful day at work can make you grumpy and withdrawn at home, while having a great time with family can make you happier and more motivated at work. The work enrichment model builds on this idea, looking at the positive ways that things we learn and experience in one role can make us better in another role.
You also mentioned boundary theory and border theory. They seem pretty important in this area. How do they fit in?
They're really important for understanding how people manage the connections and separations between work and personal life. They look at how we create and keep those boundaries, those mental and physical lines between the two.
Okay.
Border theory focuses more on the psychological borders, how we think about separating work from non-work. While boundary theory looks at our actual behaviors, the strategies we use to manage how those boundaries work. What's interesting is how technology has blurred those lines. With smartphones and laptops, we're always connected. Work never really ends. Researchers now talk about a boundaryless work-life interface.
That's definitely true for many of us, especially with more and more people working remotely. Now, the sources also talked about work-family conflict and work-family enrichment.
Right.
It seems like two sides of the same coin.
In a lot of ways they are. Work-family conflict, it's when doing one thing, whether it's work or family, gets in the way of doing the other. Researchers have found three main types of conflict. Time-based, where you just don't have enough time for both. Strain-based, where stress from one spills over and makes the other harder. And behavior-based, where the expectations of one clash with the other.
And this conflict can go both ways, right? Work messing with family and family messing with work.
Exactly. There's work-to-family conflict, where work demands hurt family life, like long hours making you miss family stuff. And then there's family-to-work conflict, where family responsibilities affect your work, like having to take time off suddenly for a sick child. Both are real and often connected, but research has focused more on work-to-family conflict, maybe because work is often less flexible. The effects of work-family conflict are pretty broad. It can make you less happy with your job, less happy with your life overall, and more stressed, leading to things like depression or even substance abuse. Sadly, there's not a lot of research on how to fix this, but some studies show that having supportive mentors can help, and training managers to be more family-friendly can be good for employees struggling with this conflict.
And then we have work-family enrichment, which sounds much better.
It is. It's when good things from one area make the other area better.
Yeah.
Like skills you learn at work, like communicating or solving problems, can help you in your family life too. And this enrichment goes both ways. Work-family enrichment happens when work makes your family life better. Maybe you feel proud of your accomplishments at work, and that gives you more energy and a better mood at home, or the skills you learn at work help you in your personal life. Family work enrichment is the other way around. Your family helps you at work. Maybe they support you emotionally, which helps you deal with stress and be more resilient and productive at work. There are things that can boost work-family enrichment, like certain personality traits, being outgoing and open to new experiences, and also having a supportive workplace that gives you enough resources, lets you make decisions, and helps you develop your skills.
So it's not just about avoiding the bad stuff, but also about actively finding ways to make different parts of our lives help each other out.
Exactly.
Now for the practical stuff. What can we actually do to improve our work-life balance? And what can managers do to help their teams?
The sources gave lots of good advice, both for individuals and for leaders. For people who want to improve their work-life balance, 12 tips kept coming up.
Okay.
First, planning ahead, trying to fit work and personal stuff together strategically. Then, figure out how your brain works best, and use productivity techniques, like the Pomodoro method, to work in focused bursts with breaks. Set specific times for different tasks, and really try to stop working at a certain time each day. Maybe turn off your work devices or schedule a personal activity right after work to enforce that boundary.
That idea of work expands to fill the time allotted is so true, especially when working from home.
Oh, totally. Without a physical office, you have to create those boundaries yourself. Tech can also help you unplug. Use apps that block distracting websites and notifications when you need to focus, and turn on Do Not Disturb for work stuff after hours. Also, take proper lunch breaks even if you're at home, and try to socialize with colleagues even if it's online. And it might seem obvious, but taking time off, whether you're sick, have personal stuff, or are going on vacation, is so important to avoid burnout and recharge. Also, try practicing mindfulness to become more aware of your body and emotions. Find hobbies you truly love outside work to help you disconnect, and be ready to rethink a job that always feels imbalanced. Lastly, talk to your manager about your workload and priorities, and don't be afraid to get help from a coach or therapist if you feel overwhelmed or stuck. The biggest thing is to start small, make gradual changes, because lasting improvements take time and effort.
Those are some great tips we can all try. What about managers? How can they help their teams find a better balance?
The sources had 7 ways managers can support their people. First, remind them to truly disconnect on vacation or personal time. It seems obvious, but it helps. Create chances for them to socialize through online or in-person team activities to build a more supportive environment. Explain all the benefits available, like paid time off, sick leave, employee assistance programs. And lead by example. Actually use those benefits yourself to show it's okay to take time off. Regularly check in with your team about how they're doing, not just their work. And notice signs of burnout, like missed deadlines or changes in how they act. Set a good example yourself. Maybe do walking meetings to get some exercise, or space out meetings so people have time to focus. Pay attention to the company culture and don't make being available 24/7 the norm. Discourage people from expecting instant replies to emails or messages outside work hours. And finally, respect working hours. Don't schedule meetings before or after those times, and talk to anyone who's always working late or online.
It sounds like communication and a respectful culture are really important for a healthy work-life balance in any team.
For sure.
One thing that has changed things a lot is remote work. The sources talked about how complicated this is for work-life balance.
Remote work, it's interesting because it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
On one hand, you have so much flexibility with your time and where you work. You can make your own lunch, no commute, and do quick personal things between meetings. But this flexibility can also blur the lines between work and personal life. Without a separate office, and without the usual signals that work is starting or ending, it's harder to turn off your work brain. Your home becomes your office, making it tough to separate work from relaxation.
Yeah, when your office is always right there, it's hard to leave it behind at the end of the day.
Exactly. And the pandemic made this even more complicated. With fewer chances to do fun things and be social, work became the main way some people socialized and kept their minds active. So while remote work has good sides, it also creates new challenges for work-life balance, requiring more effort to set boundaries and keep them.
This has been such a great deep dive into work-life balance. As we wrap up, what are the most important things you want listeners to remember?
I think the big thing is work-life balance isn't just a nice idea. It's essential for both our well-being and how well our organizations work. If we ignore those signs of imbalance, it can hurt our health, our relationships, and even how well we do our jobs.
Yeah.
We all have a part to play in creating a healthier balance, individuals and employers. We need to set boundaries, take care of ourselves, and speak up about what we need. Managers and leaders need to build a supportive culture that values people's time and encourages them to disconnect and recharge. Finding the right work-life balance is different for everyone. It takes self-awareness, trying different things, and always checking in with yourself to see what feels sustainable, healthy, and fulfilling in the long run.
That's a great summary. And here's one last thought. With technology becoming more and more a part of our lives and work constantly changing, how will the idea of work-life balance need to adapt in the future?
Interesting question.
It's something to think about, maybe consider your own experiences and the things we talked about today. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.